A young girl was constantly mocked and discriminated against at school because of her mother's ugly appearance. She scribbled all over her mom's photos and even wished her dead. Unfortunately, the mother accidentally witnessed these vicious words. Heartbroken, she decided to end her own life. The girl saw this, but hesitated when looking at her mother's unsightly face. Perhaps it was a good thing for her to die like this, she thought. So the girl coldly turned away, leaving her mother to die in despair. Years flew by, and the girl had become the editor-in-chief of a publishing house. But one eerie night, something bizarre happened. In a comic sent by an artist, the protagonist's outfit mirrored hers exactly. Perplexed, she sat in her chair, staring at the comic on the screen. Shockingly, the female lead in the comic made the same move, as if it predicted reality. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes widened in disbelief. The comic vividly depicted her disdain for her mother and the horrific suicide scene. This secret, buried deep in her heart for years, was entirely exposed. Utterly baffled, she couldn't fathom how the author knew about her private life. She frantically dialed the author's number, demanding to know their identity and motives. At this critical moment, the room's window eerily closed on its own. In a panic, she grabbed a knife to defend herself, only to find, to her horror, that her comic self also wielded the same blade. Every single frame seemed to foretell her fate. Suddenly, her late mother's wails echoed behind her. Scared out of her wits, she ultimately turned the knife on herself. The next day, the police arrived at the crime scene to investigate. They found that it perfectly matched the depictions in the comic, down to the victim's pose. Since the surveillance footage showed the editor was the only one in the room, the police initially suspected it to be a comic mimicking suicide. They had no choice but to turn their attention to the comic artist, Daisy, but her terrified expression and words seemed to prove her innocence. Lacking evidence, the police had to let her go for the time being. Meanwhile, another horror comic spread online, this time featuring Jack, a mortuary body collector. A few years ago, Jack's wife fell seriously ill, forcing him to quit his job to care for her. Watching his wife deteriorate, and the house in a mess, an evil thought crossed Jack's mind. If his wife were to die like this, wouldn't everyone be relieved? Unexpectedly, after being sent to the mortuary, his wife, who had stopped breathing, suddenly showed signs of life. Seeing this, Jack quickly sent his colleagues away and suffocated his wife to death with a shroud. Little did he know that this secret crime would be turned into a comic, leaving Jack absolutely shocked. He hurriedly packed his things, ready to flee, only to find a corpse firmly grasping the hem of his clothes from behind. Do you think this series of bizarre homicides is man-made or the work of supernatural forces?